Hello, you're watching TVP World News. I'm Jonasz Rewiński. Anti-government protests intensify in Serbia. On Friday, several hundreds of protesters who marched from the country's capital to Novi Sad reached the city, where they were greeted by thousands. On Saturday, the protesters are to block the three major bridges in the city. Our Balkans correspondent, Paweł Trzaskowski, is right there and has more details. So, Paweł, can you tell us more about these latest developments?
Well, behind me you can see the Sloboda Bridge, the main bridge in Novi Sad. As you can see, the cars are now passing freely, but not for much longer, because this bridge, along with two more, is going to be blocked later in the afternoon. According to the information that circulates on Serbian social media, two other bridges are going to be blocked for an hour, and this one, the Sloboda Bridge, which translates to the Bridge of Freedom or the Bridge of Liberty, is going to be blocked for 24 hours. So this is a move similar to the one that we saw in Belgrade just a week ago, when the major intersection in the country's capital was blocked for an entire day. And the protesters will gather there to protest and to block the bridge, to oppose what they say is a corrupt government of President Alexander Vučić. Initially, this is a continuation of the protests that have been ongoing for 3 months now. And initially, these protests were started by students. However, with time, people from other walks of life joined the protests. Yesterday, we were at the railway station in Novi Sad in the evening, where the accident, which killed 15 people, happened 3 months ago. And people gathered there, people from different walks of life, starting from students to cyclists to farmers in tractors, motorcyclists, families with children, and they all gathered there to oppose the current government. Actually, today, Novak Djokovic, a Serbian tennis superstar, was spotted wearing a sweatshirt with an inscription, "Students are champions." So the protests are engulfing different parts of society. They are growing even larger, and we will be here to cover these events for you. Back to the studio.
Paweł Trzaskowski there, reporting live from the city of Novi Sad, where it all began with a tragedy, and now where the protesters are trying to make a change with their activities and their determination. Paweł, thank you very much for joining us. And now we're going to move on to the next story. One of the potential outcomes of the protests in Serbia could be an expert-run government. That is according to Vujo Ilić, a research fellow at the University of Belgrade. Speaking to TVP World, Ilić once again pointed out that what the protesting students are also demanding is the criminal accountability of the current government.
They demanded accountability, and they're also demanding criminal responsibility for what happened in Novi Sad, as well as transparency in the money flows and the construction documents. Which means that it takes time for these demands to be fulfilled. Right now, what we are all wondering is, how will the students actually evaluate this? Legal procedures take time. We all understand this, and so it's a big question. How long can this movement maintain this momentum, knowing that the legal process can take weeks, months, or even years?
Do you expect to see more political change at the top, more resignations, even if it's not precisely what the students are calling for?
Actually, yes. Prime Minister resigned on Tuesday, and on Monday, the President Vučić announced government reshuffle. So even though this resignation of Prime Minister was sudden, we all expected that there would be a major reshuffle of the government, and President Vučić was announcing 50% of the cabinet would be replaced. What could be expected is that more ministers would form this government outside of the ruling Serbian Progressive Party, which means that we could look ahead for some sort of expert-run government, similar to the previous Prime Minister Ana Brnabić, who became a prime minister in 2017 and to 2019, she wasn't a member of the ruling party. We might actually expect something like that to happen again.
Meanwhile, Georgians also took to the streets of their capital city, Tbilisi, on Friday night. They marched from several parts of the city towards parliament. The protest was organized in solidarity with the people arrested during the anti-government demonstrations, which took place in late 2024. Now, the aforementioned protests originally erupted in response to Prime Minister Irakli Kobakhidze's announcement that Georgia would delay accession negotiations with the European Union until 2028. According to local human rights groups, some 400 people have been detained during the protests, many of whom have been physically abused and denied medical care. The UN has also published a report calling on the government to investigate allegations of excessive force and torture by police. Earlier this week, Brussels suspended visa-free travel to the EU for Georgian diplomats and officials, citing the violent repression by Georgian authorities against peaceful protesters, politicians, and independent media. Moldovan energy company Moldova Gas says it has delivered the first gas shipment to the breakaway region Transnistria after Russia halted its supplies. The region has been facing an energy crisis since the beginning of the year. Tens of thousands of residents have been left without heat or gas. The first gas shipment of 3 million cubic meters has reached Transnistria, according to the supplier. The CEO of Moldova Gas says the delivery is intended to fill the Transnistrian gas system. Moldovan authorities have accused Moscow of trying to destabilize the region after the Russian deliveries to Transnistria were halted. The European Union has spent 30 million euros to provide heat and electricity to help the region. Russian missiles have hit the southern Ukrainian port city of Odesa. A hotel in the historic city center was damaged as a result. 7 people were wounded in the strike. In his latest address, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky said Ukraine needs more air defense systems to prevent such situations from happening.
Work is ongoing in the south of our country, in Odesa, after Russian missile strikes. Preliminary reports indicate that ballistic missiles were used. These were strikes directly on the city, on ordinary civilian buildings. Again, air defense remains our top priority. We are working with all our partners to better protect our state. Today I held a staff meeting. Many reports were presented on the supplies to our troops, our weapons, all purchases and contracts. Everything is in place. The supplies are there. We need to speed up deliveries and increase the supply of weaponry that will help us save more lives, our soldiers and our people. More orders for drones, more investments in the developing of robotic systems, and more deliveries of basic weapons. All the necessary instructions have been given. Our industry has the potential. Countries, especially in Europe, are ready to cooperate with Ukraine and invest in our defense production.
US President Donald Trump has told reporters that he, and I quote, will definitely impose tariffs on the European Union. On Saturday, President Trump is expected to sign an order that will place 25% tariffs on Canadian and Mexican products, as well as 10% on Chinese imports.
Am I going to impose tariffs on the European Union? Do you want the truthful answer, or should I give you a political answer? Absolutely. Absolutely. The European Union has treated us so terribly, but the tariffs are going to make us very rich and very strong, and we're going to treat other countries very fairly. But if you think about it, other countries charge us tariffs. We don't charge them tariffs, and it's about time that that changes.
Now we're staying in the United States. A small medical transport plane crashed into a Philadelphia neighborhood on Friday night. No survivors have been found so far in the ongoing rescue operation. The plane, carrying 4 crew members, a child patient and his mother, crashed into several buildings in northeast Philadelphia, leaving behind a fiery path of destruction. Several people on the ground have been injured as a result. The child on board the plane received care in the US for a life-threatening condition and was returning to Mexico. Philadelphia Mayor Sherelle Parker said city officials do not know the number of fatalities, but the city is asking for prayers for anyone and everyone that may have been affected. 2 Israeli hostages have been handed over to the Red Cross personnel in Gaza, and one more is set to be released later this morning in the latest stage of phased exchange of hostages for Palestinian prisoners. Israel is expected to transfer 182 Palestinian prisoners and detainees in return. 17 of the 33 hostages to be released in the first stage of the ceasefire have now been released in exchange for 400 Palestinian prisoners and detainees, according to the B'Tselem, an Israeli Center for Human Rights. There are currently more than 10,000 Palestinians incarcerated in Israeli prisons. More than 70 people captured during the October the 7th attack remain in the captivity of Hamas. And with this, we conclude our news bulletin. Please stay with us here on TVP World for more latest news and updates.